So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending today's second session of our Forum of the Week. For those that don't know me, my name is Chris Peters. I am your current president of NSAR. I will be approaching, April will be my 10-year anniversary. I am a father of two wonderful, outstanding boys, a super happy husband of one wonderful wife, Karen, and a resident of Eastern Passage. But today I will be joining you as your moderator for our diversity panel. Just quickly, I want to acknowledge that we are in Mi'kmaq territory, the ancestral, traditional, unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We also want to acknowledge the significant foundations that Black and African Nova Scotians have played building our province and our country. As we get into the conversations today, I'm very fortunate that in my role as president, I was able to recommend to our board of directors, and with their approval, we've struck what we have right now, and we've met, I think it's 3 or 4 times, is the diversity task force, in which Sandy Lee, one of our current panelists, and Susan Green are our chairs, and our other 3 guests, Sharif, Ume, and Damien are all members of our diversity task force. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about a heavy topic, racism and diversity, and in particular, racism and diversity in the real estate world and our real life experiences. I know that just based on my own experiences that this can be a pretty heavy topic, as I indicated earlier, not just for those of us who are going to be talking about it, but also for those of you in the audience who are going to be hearing some of these stories that our panelists are going to be sharing today, which are all true real life stories. We know that this can be a difficult conversation with the events that have gone over in the past year, or if you want to look at the broader scope of things, the conversations that have been ongoing for decades and over the past century. But these are important conversations to have. We realize that the topic of diversity is very vast, but we're going to be focusing on just a small part of that today as we speak about racism and those people of color within our industry. NSAR is going to look forward to continuing this conversation. And if you had joined us earlier, you would have heard some of the conversation that we hopefully will have our next panel in January. That's going to bring in further conversations about the diversity within our industry and our community. But as it is right now, the work starts here and the work starts with all of us. We can make this difference, but in order to do that, we have to start talking about it. We have to work together to bring diversity, to be accepting and more supportive as an industry and as a people within Nova Scotia. So before we get further into this, I just wanted to talk about a particular term that I know that was new for some folks on our diversity task force. So we want to make sure that those of you that are in attendance today are aware of it. And the term is BIPOC, B-I-P-O-C. And that is an acronym that stands for Black, Indigenous, People of Color. So that's something that we're going to be talking about today. That's going to be the focus of most of our conversation for this particular panel. Damien, thank you for joining us, sir. There's our 4th and final panelist. So we encourage everyone to share their thoughts. We're going to be listening to these 4 panelists talk today. But if you have questions or comments that you want to bring up, we will save those for the end. We do have staff pages online, and she'll be monitoring both the chat and the Q&A section. And if needed, and if there's a lot going on, I know Tanya White is able to be brought into this to help do the moderation of those comments. So please definitely feel free. But the focus will most definitely be our 4 panelists today. So I'm going to first do a quick intro of all 4 panelists, and then we're going to get into the conversation. So our first panelist, just popping into the conversation just a few moments ago, is Mr. Damien McCartney. Damien was born and raised in the Bahamas and has often wondered what else the world had to offer. So that's what brought him here. He started in university in the Bahamas. He transferred to Mount St. Vincent, and he says it was one of the best decisions that he's ever made coming here to Nova Scotia. He completed his business degree and put down roots right here in Nova Scotia. And I know by him and I having talking personally together outside of these forums, he has done a lot in this community in extending his reach and support. Him and his partner have recently just purchased a home together, and it gives him a little bit more insight about what it means to be on both sides of the equation. Because of this great experience, he has wanted to help others achieve their goals of home ownership. Damien is newly licensed, and he can't wait to see what a career in real estate has to offer him here in Nova Scotia. So Damien, thank you for joining us today.
That was perfect. Thank you.
Our second panelist of the day is going to be Miss Umi Sadar. I pronounced that correctly? Yes? Excellent. Umi began her career as a realtor in Ontario, where she held an associate broker license. After working in Ontario for a number of years, she decided to head overseas and, if you can imagine, continued her practice of real estate in Qatar. After spending some time over there, she decided it was time to return to Canada. And upon her return, she came to join us here in Nova Scotia and started her family and became newly re-licensed in real estate here in Nova Scotia. So while Umi may be new to Nova Scotia, she is definitely not new to real estate. So her seasoned experience globally will be a great insight into what our conversations are going to be about today. So thank you, Umi, for joining us.
Thank you.
Our next panelist likes to go by a singular name, like Cher, Beyonce. We like to call him Sharif Al-Kashari. Sharif has spent his youth growing up all over the world, which enabled him to learn multiple languages. In 1995, he moved to Nova Scotia to finish his degree at Dalhousie. He's been working in real estate since August of 2004. His business approach is to think of what his clients are going to feel after their transaction is completed. And nothing but the best will do for him. I've worked with Sharif personally, and I know that is his motto. That's how he lives. Sharif is a hardworking father of 3 amazing kids. This is a fact I did not know. You're an amateur horseman.
Amateur.
I didn't write the script, man. One
No,
thing I
it's all
do
good,
know about
Chris.
him personally, he's an avid biker, loves his motorcycles, and he's a patron of all things tech. He is the tech guy to go to, as we were talking about Apple earlier. So Sharif, thank you for joining us today. And last but not least, the co-chair of our diversity panel, Miss Sandy Lee. Sandy, for those of you that have known her, Sandy's been around the Nova Scotia real estate business for quite a number of years and as an active volunteer. Sandy is energetic and personal in her approach to business. And as I said, she has made volunteering in our industry and within NSCR as part of her lifestyle. She currently sits, as I said, as the co-chair of the Diversity Task Force. She has been an active, ongoing member several years now on the Political Action Committee and the Provincial and Municipal Affairs Committee, which is our PMAC and PAC committees. Sandy is also a proud member of the Real Estate Institute of Canada, and she's sitting on the Fry Task Force. When she's not fulfilling all these volunteer positions, Sandy, you got your hands full, girl. She acts as a volunteer with the emergency response for the Red Cross. Sandy is a proud resident of Fall River, 3 beautiful children, and she has recently somehow convinced and sucked her husband, Patrick, into the world of real estate as well. So well done, Sandy. One more person to our glorious expanding team of 1,600 plus members. So thank you, Sandy, for joining us here as well.
Thank you, Chris.
So as I said at the top of this, today's conversation can be seen as being a little bit heavy. We're talking about diversity and we're talking about racism. As I was talking about in our preamble to this, those can sometimes be pretty heavy conversations. They're not conversations that a lot of people are comfortable about. We as a society have made it almost taboo to openly talk about these conversations. But how do you solve issues if you're not willing to talk about them? So within our industry, we have decided at this point in time, it's time to start talking about this because we can fix this, or at least we can start the process of doing so. So we want all of our panelists to feel comfortable in being able to open up. So thank you guys for coming out here today and willing to share your stories. Thank you to our audience for willing to participate. One thing we'll ask is please be mindful and respectful of the opinions of our panelists. That these are their life experiences. And for them to be able to open up and share these stories, I know just from my own life experience, can be difficult at times. And just wanted to remind everyone that we do have staff online who will be monitoring both the chat and the Q&A. So if you feel that you want to add some comments or have anything that you want to ask any of our panelists, please feel free to put those comments in the Q&A or in the chat. And Paige will either, if it's something that should come up at that particular time, she'll interrupt and bring up those comments or questions, or we'll save them for the end. So, Damien, you are our newest realtor among the crowd. So we're going to start with you, my friend. In your opinion, is residential real estate seen as a viable career option for BIPOC Canadians? And what challenges have you personally faced coming into real estate here in Nova Scotia?
It's a good question. I would say that, yeah, it is a viable industry for anybody in Nova Scotia. There holds a lot of promising areas for you to profit off of, and also you assist in small families or already established families.
Damien, you've got a little bit of static and feedback going on with your mic. I'm not sure if that's something that you can adjust there.
I could try.
Thanks, man.
Sounds better.
It does right now.
Okay, perfect. All right, let's try and go with that. Yeah, as I was saying, I feel like for someone who lives in Nova Scotia, it's a very good way for you to experience your province and also get to know your own communities. So I feel like it's a very good industry for you to enter.
What would you say has been a couple of your biggest challenges as you tried to enter this industry?
My biggest challenge, I would say, is just, I guess, relating to the general clients. Usually my clients would be older, or they would be in industries that I don't really have too much, too much experience in. So our conversations do tend to be kind of dry. And also in relating to what the typical home buyer is looking for as well. Some persons, they want to downgrade. Some persons want to expand. I feel like my challenge would be with that is just off the bat, speaking with someone and picking up what they're actually interested in. Anybody could tell you a list of things that they're looking for, but it takes a real experienced real estate agent to find that perfect property for someone. And I feel like it's a bit challenging for me starting out, but I'm pretty sure with more experience, I'll get the hang of it.
You definitely will. You definitely will.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go counterclockwise, and I'm going to unmute you now, Ume, and I'm going to ask you, Ume, the same question. Do you feel, based on your experience, both you've been, as I've already said, licensed here in Nova Scotia, licensed in Ontario, licensed overseas. Do you think that real estate is seen as a viable career option for BIPOC Canadians? And what challenges have you faced personally within Nova Scotia as you started up in this career?
I personally think it's it's a really good career for somebody. I'm a first generation immigrant. And when I moved to Toronto in the year 2000 or so, and I was looking for career options, I thought real estate really brought all my talents and the fact that I'd lived in various places in the world and I spoke several languages. It all came together in the profession, and I was able to make a success of it. When it comes to racism or I really can't say I've faced any in Canada, neither in Toronto nor in Nova Scotia. I found it very easy to work with the local populace, immigrants and people who are born in Canada. Compared to some of the other places in the world where I've lived, I think, there's very little of an issue here. There are reservations. which one can learn to counter and deal with.
What do you
But
mean by that exactly?
I think all of us as human beings have certain prejudices or reservations when it comes to others. It doesn't have to be related to race. There are just so many. It's almost like it's built into our psyche. Maybe it comes at from a very young age. And one of the good things about real estate is I think it's taught me to deal with different people and to learn to handle if I think that there may be any perceived reservations, then I deal with it on a one-to-one basis. But basically, I really have faced very little prejudice here.
That's refreshing to hear. Sharif, I will go to you next, my friend. If you can unmute, let me just unmute you here.
Sure.
Same question for you.
Well, as far as a career choice for people of color and immigrants, if we were to generalize immigrants as people of color as well, but some of them are not. But that having been said, yeah, it's definitely a very viable career. I think as an organization, we should market to people outside of the general public and try to look at communities that perhaps lack representation in our realm of work. So whether it be to market to people of the Chinese community or Black community or indigenous communities that we could reach out to, advertising that job option or that career option is available and viable to them, right down to the point where we take it into, sending them information in their own language so that we appear that we are doing more than just sort of carpet bombing the whole situation or, the advertising of it in a bit more specific manner.
Right.
So that is, going back to it's viable, absolutely viable. I think we just need to do more work as an organization, reaching out to people who are different than the masses around us here, that it's a viable career for them as well. And here's how we could help.
And you believe that's a responsibility of the association to reach out to those different cultures and communities?
It would be, if you left it to the brokerages, I think it would not be a very fair playing field because the brokerages are going to try to always bring these people into their fold as opposed to the general industry. So I would imagine it would be more important that the association does it as opposed to the brokerages.
Okay.
But it's totally something that is up to the association to decide. But where we're trying to include more people of different backgrounds, it can't be left to the brokerages to do that. I think if we left it to brokerages to do education, CPE stuff, we'd have very little in a year. So that's answering.
That brings us down a different topic of discussion, which we will avoid here today. But so on the second part of that, what would you say have been some of your greatest challenges that you faced as a member of the BIPOC Canadian within real estate?
Well, I think I mentioned this before in one of our meetings, and that within our organizations, there is no human resource divisions or departments. We're independent contractors. Everybody in that office is a customer of the organization. There's no really an employee per se in our role, set aside people in accounting and what have you. But that having been said, definitely the comments, particularly being from the Middle East and being Muslim, you see, Charlie Hebdo happens, the silly questions begin. Ramadan starts, the silly comments get made. And, somebody like me is quite thick-skinned about it. So that's one of the realms I've seen it. Now, of course, my wife joined real estate as well, and I was pretty active in bringing her to functions and things that we were involved in before she became a realtor herself. And comments about dress code would, arise, and when is this going to stop being worn around these parts? And comments of that nature were made. Sadly, they weren't very infrequent. They weren't very frequent either. But again, luckily, we're blessed with thick skin, so we deal with it and just let it roll off our backs. But there are some people who I'd imagine would take quite, significant exception to it.
Well, I think to your comment, just the fact that because you feel that you have thick skin, and that comes from experience.
It comes from experience. But then there is that other point that I made in one of our meetings, is that you start suffering from Stockholm syndrome, which is that you, the victim of a situation, start sympathizing with the offender so that you don't get singled out or draw attention to the situation, thereby creating for yourself and even more under the microscope type of life. So that, because of course we lack, whether it be an organization as a brokerage or the organization as an association, we lack structure, or should have structure in place where things like that could be tabled, addressed, reprimanded if need be, but we don't have that. So you end up thinking to yourself, well, there is no mechanism I know of. It's not like I could call the police for this. So I'll just be quiet and let it slide and keep going, which is pretty bad. You know, again, it's the nature of the industry that we're in and the way it works, but there is, I would believe, a necessary role for that to exist. Is that people could say this is not right. It should not continue like this.
No, and I thank you for sharing that, and you've shared it also with the diversity task force. So I know that's definitely going to be something.
I feel like I'm repeating myself, but that's okay. We have a broader audience.
It's okay. We've got a whole new audience, and I think
fine.
this is a conversation that everyone needs to hear as well. So thank you for sharing that. So Sandy, I'm going to bring it over to you with the same question. As you have been in the real estate business for quite some time, do you see that real estate is a viable career option for BIPOC Canadians? And if you would be so kind to share us some of your personal struggles and challenges.
Chris, first of all, I would like to thank you for creating and advocating for the Diversity Task Force Committee. I mean, this is, very important committee. And I think that, first off, I mean, it's something that we do not talk about. And this gives our association, the Realtors, and for the public to understand what it feels like to be a minority of, or or just people of color, or, just being indifferent. I think this will allow, for us to speak up, and there will be a voice, and people can, submit questions or concerns. And like Sharif was saying, just not having a place, where we can talk about and address these issues if there were racism or any type of unjust for just being a minority, right? But anyways, yes, going back, I just want to say thank you, Chris. This is very important to me and for all of us, and that's why we're here. I do think that being BIPOC, there is a huge, it's a viable career for us. I mean, there are opportunities for us to set examples of, to other minorities, and that, yes, we are a realtor and we're setting positive, positive notes out there of being what success is, and so on and so forth. But we, can resemble a lot of things that, for those, who are minority and who don't have the confidence to, come out and be, in other words, it's important for more of us to set examples. I mean, to be a realtor, I mean, it's, first of all, like just struggling. I mean, I've never had any struggles, and I certainly would like to, be an advocate and be a voice for those who have, and didn't have a voice. And this is why, like, I feel, just being in the task force, we're there to speak for the ones who can't speak up. And it's just an honor to be in the task. And I don't know, Chris, I mean, what do you, I mean, let's turn this around to you. I mean, how do you see this with, do you feel that being a realtor is a viable career as a BIPOC for you?
Well, look at you flipping it over on me. That's not in my script. That's not at all in my script. I guess from my perspective, I guess I've been somewhat blessed and fortunate as well. But one, I think this is definitely a opportunity and for BIPOC Canadians, and I do think this is a great career option. Just looking at some of the chat there, and I couldn't agree with you more, Sarah. Sarah makes the comment about that agents who come from a diverse background and or cultures can greater empathize with newcomers to Nova Scotia and to Canada, and can bring a different dynamic and bring a different and possibly even richer experience with regards to what this process looks like. Have I encountered some challenges within this industry? I would definitely say I have, but I don't necessarily know if I would say that I would believe that they were all related to race and culture. What does surprise and challenge me sometime over the last year or so, and I think I shared this at our first meeting of the diversity task force, and when I won the nomination to be vice president for our association, it automatically started making me think and look more deeply into our association. And as I did so, some of the things I recognized, and part of why I had sought in having this task force, is that when you look at our committees and our boards, when it comes to visible minorities, and I was saying this to our task force, when you look at the entire board of directors at NSAR, you look at all of our committees, which we have quite a number of. Right now, before me, as I'm looking at 4 amazing panelists, we don't have this much diversity from BIPOC Canadians in all of our committees and our board. As it stands right now, Sandy and I were the only 2 people of color within all of our committees and our boards. Not saying that we don't have diversity. As I said at the start, diversity takes all shapes and colors and goes beyond color, of course. But it just surprised me that that's where our committee, which represents such a culturally rich province, especially within Nova Scotia and some of the history that lies here, that we didn't necessarily represent everyone as an association. So I'm glad to see this task force. We've got about, I think, 17 active members on the task force, which definitely and truly represents the richness that our association brings out as part of our community, because we should be a reflection of our community as well. And on that note, just going to bring this back, and I'm going to go to you, Sharif, first on this one. And over the last little while in the news, we've heard a lot about different things within regards to, we know that home ownership generates wealth within not just Nova Scotia, but within Canada. But if you look at the Nova Scotian history, we know that has been a challenge. Home ownership sometimes can be a generational thing, and that generational piece of it brings wealth to multiple generations. And whether you're looking at Indigenous people within Nova Scotia who have a long history here, when you speak of the Mi'kmaq people, or if you look at the Black people of Nova Scotia and the history of the Loyalists, of the Maroons, of the Underground Railroad coming into Nova Scotia and Halifax. There's been a lot of talk of that in the news of late, and I've heard just over the last couple of days within Halifax City Council about some of the Black culture and history and the lack of it. For those that aren't unaware, Black people, when they were moved here and settled in different places, they were given ownership to the land, but not title and not access to title. Well, without title, you don't have true ownership, which means you don't have that generational wealth. What do you think, Sharif, and I'll start with you, what do you think that we as an industry can do, or do you think that people who are BIPOC Canadians are disproportionately disadvantaged to having home ownership and to be able to create that wealth? And what do you think we as an industry can do to encourage home ownership within BIPOC Canadians? Oh, you're on. Let me unmute you there. There you go.
I'm unmuted. It's very straightforward. When you have a society or a segment of society that does not get any special attention, but definitely needs it, their situation is going to go from bad to worse across the board. So as an organization of people who deal and transact in real estate, marketing to those populations should be first and foremost, and helping them be aware of what their access and rights are and what their ability to improve their situation is. That, along with banks coming to the table and educating them. I mean, this is a segment of the market that people ignore, but it's massively resourceful for those trying to make money off of it, as well as help those who are suffering from the lack of wealth in it get better. It's just always going to be the same. If the marginal people of a society, in this case, historically marginalized, are not paid special attention to, their situation is never going to improve. It's going to maybe gradually and minimally improve, but we as an organization of people who, you know, we are in some way entrusted with telling people this is the right decision for you. For me, who, you know, somebody who sells real estate, to tell somebody who's renting, you're accumulating wealth by paying the landlord's mortgage. That is dishonest. That is wrong. It's a lie. So as people who are entrusted in that role, we should be informing people who suffer from not having that wealth, access to the information, and ability to increase their wealth. We, you know, there's a wrong on us in a situation, in a sense. And we should drag the people who could benefit from it and help themselves. If we don't do that, this is going to continue for another few decades. It's simple. Relying on people to, you know, the 3 circles of knowledge, Chris, the largest one of them is you don't know what you don't know. People don't know that this develops well for them, it builds wealth for them. So they'll go from paycheck to paycheck and, you know, meek existence to another level of meek existence. And it's upon us to help them know that there's better resources or options for them.
Agreed. So for those that were unaware, Mortgage Sandbox compiles stats on home ownership and throughout Canada, and they say that home ownership in Canada averages around 40%, and Indigenous, and those are for Black Canadians. Indigenous home ownership is slightly higher at 58%. So Ume, you've been around in multiple regions outside of just Nova Scotia as well. What do you think, to the same effect, that we as realtors can do to help, or do you feel that that help is needed from our industry for people of BIPOC Canadians? Oh, let me, hold on, Ume, you're muted. Let's unmute you, girl. There you go.
I think we can definitely play a role. The very fact that we also speak several languages, that we're able to make a connection simply because, you know, one looks similar to the person you're speaking to, especially where language, and when somebody is new to Nova Scotia, help them through the process, educate them on the fact that home ownership is a viable option and why renting is a waste of their resources. We can go a long way in that. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Sandy, so I'll ask you a similar question, but do you think there's a greater role, or that there's a need for a role for realtors to play in allowing different Nova Scotians of the BIPOC community to get into home ownership? Is that something that we as realtors need to be advocating for?
Absolutely.
Oh, you're back on mute there, Sandy.
I absolutely agree. I think that we should definitely do our best, and us being in our diversity task force, and so the association, NSAR, I mean, all of us, I think it's important for us to put something together and try to advocate and help people, I mean, transition from renting to buying, and even work with mortgage brokers, or maybe lawyers, with immigration lawyers, or, you know, just try to gather some information and resources, and you know, I think by putting 100 heads together and advocating about it and putting it out there, I mean, I think this will really improve the dilemma that we're dealing with right now. And it's just really nice to be able to talk about it, and everybody can shed some light and talk about it and share and have some of their own feedback or personal experiences and ideas to expand and, you know, do what we can
Thank you. So, Damien, I'm going to ask you the same question, being our newest realtor among the group. And I know based on conversations you and I have personally had outside of this committee, what do you think that we as an association, as an industry, can do to help close that generational gap with regards to home ownership, which obviously then leads to wealth? What do you think that we could or should be doing?
Well, I feel like there's a few different different approaches we could come about battling this task. Personally, we usually try and push our message through my collective Changes Brewing. We try and push our initiatives on the younger generations. So there are different outlets such as like the YMCA or different community centers that allow information to be passed on to different generations. So I feel like tapping into the community from a younger age, specifically the BIPOC community, that would be a great advantage for them as they progress in their lives. Because I know that in certain schools, they don't really teach you how to pay your mortgage. They don't really teach you about taxes and such. So I feel like passing information on to children at a younger age will benefit them throughout their life. And in influencing the different BIPOC communities, I could suggest that we somehow set up a network of with leaders in certain communities, specifically like the Preston areas. They usually have like building or community development groups that already have been established in such areas, but obviously they hit a ceiling because there is no connection with our real estate, I guess, like industry. So you don't really have persons from those areas that are agents or developers or lawyers or things of that nature. So I feel like if we were to make systemic approaches to tap into those areas, then we can make those connections that'll benefit our business. And pretty much, I guess, like Sharif had mentioned, that it's an untapped market. So it'll allow us to reach into an untapped market and expand in those areas, and thus make Nova Scotia a better province for everybody.
Okay. So, and I'm going to take a little bit here from one of our participants' questions and blend it with some thoughts I have. So this is in part coming from Mark Boland, as well as from myself. We know that diversity is a broad spectrum, but it also varies across the province. I'm going to go to you, Sandy, first when I ask, do you think that realtors in various regions are impacted differently by issues of racism?
I do, actually. And why I say that is because coming from BC, obviously it's very diverse, it's very cultural, and there's a lot of multiculturalism, and there's already little communities and groups already formed and sort of like segue their territory. And I find down here, I mean, there are some different communities, but it's not a big, as big as BC. I mean, and like I said, like for me, being a realtor or just growing up in my own personal experience, I didn't really experience much of anything from BC, but coming and moving here back in the early 2000s, I mean, I truly felt like a minority. I felt like I was like an alien or something, and I really stood out. But being on the realtor side, when I started, there were, I believe, 5 Asians at that time. And now, I mean, I would say the last 2 to 5 years, there's a dime a dozen Asian realtors, and there's more multiculturalism now. I feel people are moving in, it's more diverse. And as far as personal experience, I mean, it's getting better. We're more open about, talking about the importance of, being, I guess, a target or a minority, but now there's more of us, and it's a really good time for us to get together and form and help build, the vibrance of multiculturalism in Nova Scotia. So it's a great time for us.
Excellent. Thank you. So Ume, I'm going to ask you a similar question, or the same question. Do you feel that depending on where you are within our province, potentially based on your international experience, that where you are in Nova Scotia will have an impact on the racism you may or may not face? You're muted there, Ume.
Okay. I've only been in Nova Scotia for about a year and a half. I do see that the diversity is limited basically to the HRM area. So I guess, yes, that would have an impact.
So would you believe then that people of BIPOC Canadians would encounter greater challenges outside of the HRM where they don't see themselves in those people that are representing them?
I would assume so, just because it takes time to, develop relationships, etc. I haven't been here that long that I have been exposed to many areas outside the HRM, but when recently I sold a home in Lunenburg, and I did notice that there's very little diversity there.
And I guess I would just add as editorial is that obviously, depending on the different types of cultures, trust is really embedded in those relationships and those personal experiences. So that definitely could be if you're a new Nova Scotian moving to an area, you might have some challenges because obviously there needs to be a lot of trust in engaging with your realtor.
Absolutely.
Okay. Sharif, I'm going to throw this question to you, and this is a question coming from our audience. This is from Victoria Hines, who asked the question, in the struggles, some of the largest struggles that you are encountering, are you finding that it's realtor to realtor, realtor to your clients, meaning the public, realtor, and we've talked about this at the task force, realtor to the brokerages and management and staff that you encounter within our association, and I'll add it one extra level with our regulator as well as being one of our partners.
Right. The public, I'll address the quickest one first. The public, no, there's rarely ever any racism or anything like that. From within the colleague population, yes. The one that I remember, it was quite funny, but I'm sure when I mention it, you guys might be appalled a slight bit, is when Charlie Hebdo happened in France and those people shot the office up, I suppose, of the magazine that made the characters of the Prophet. I got calls as to what are the plans of this terrorist organization? What are they trying to do? And I very swiftly, reprimanded the question, because how am I supposed to know why somebody shot somebody over a magazine and what their goals are? But right. You could tell that was one of the people who had the guts to ask the question. So that was from within the population area of realtors. Now, from within our governing body, yes, on several occasions, whether it's my name, the spelling of my name, the accuracy of spelling my name in what I do for a living has never caused anybody any confusion. Nobody ever called another Sharif in this industry. I don't think there is one. So I found that within the organization, my name has become a point of contention on a few occasions and substantiated a very high penalty against me and the brokerage for having my last name missing on a sign that the developer requested my last name be missing. And the developer wanted my last name off the sign, so a bit of in-house racism. He said, you got a Middle Eastern name like us. We don't want your last name publicized. People might not call you. Sharif's a very good one. Just go with Sharif. So I went with Sharif. Wow. I got fined a very hefty fine for having my last name missing, but my phone number was there. But you could sell a house with the square footage off by 30% and have a fine that was a quarter of what I got charged.
Where do you think that problem stems from?
I don't really know. I don't think anybody has ever gone after people with North American name, whether somebody mentioned their name is Matt versus Matthew or Chris versus Christopher, with such chase. It's not that confusing. I think a bit of, understanding that the name is a bit different to spell. There are letters in our alphabet that don't exist in the Western or European alphabet, or English alphabet, I should say. It's not that confusing. Last one, I guess, was the one I showed even Tanya, was my name on a course I took was spelled a bit differently than my license. And the email concluded with, "Did you pay somebody to take the course for you?" That is accusatory. I don't know why it took place against me. Now, for about an hour, it raised my blood pressure. 2-3 hours later, I was just going with what I have to do in my day. But again, I really don't know why this takes place. I think what should take place is that some level of questioning should happen, but not with a precursor or some level of suspicion insinuating that I paid somebody to take a course, or, I should be the one asking the question is, why is it happening?
Right.
Is it that big a deal that Sharif El-Kasheri with EEF or IF? Where was the confusion? The email used was the same email, because that cannot have a spelling mistake. I offered that person questioning me the IP address of my home computer to show him that I was and then again, he might have thought that I paid the kids to take it or something. I don't know.
Okay. Interesting. Unfortunate, but interesting.
It's funny, Chris. It's actually, it's funny for me. It's sad for others when they hear the story and what it could cause them. But once again, I'll always mention the fear of reprisal. I go quietly into the dark and carry on with my business, because if I was to raise this as a topic of, why are you asking me this? What is your intention about asking me this? Why are you accusing me of this? If I was to bring it up in that fashion, then, well, let's pull Sharif's files and find where initials are a centimeter off the block, and then let's find them again. So personally speaking, there's no safe harbor. If something like that happens, I probably will continue to just let it slide.
I think your microphone's a bit high there, Sharif. We're getting a bit of feedback from you.
Sorry, man.
But yeah, I think that, and I've had similar conversations with folks that there's been some fear of reprisals with regards to speaking out about some of those social injustices. So hopefully, as a diversity task force, those are some things that we can make recommendations about. Damien, as the new member of this group to Nova Scotia, what challenges have you encountered with regards to racism? And do you find that what you have encountered, if any, has been realtor to realtor, realtor to the public, those engagements among our brokerages and management and staff within the association, or interactions with the association, or as Sharif has alluded to, within our regulator?
I really haven't had a real instance of racism, I'd say, in the industry. I do know that there's been a lot of instances of possible miscommunication, maybe. For example, I remember specifically recently I'd set up a showing, and before I came, there was another realtor, and she was doing her showing, and she didn't, I had my realtor pin on, I had the big R and everything. But she still wanted to inquire who I was and if I was at the right house and stuff like that, and which real estate company I'm with. I feel like I was just going through more verification with a simple interaction with someone more than I should, but I never saw anything over the top, I'd say. But I do know that certain instances that conversations are more, I guess, slowed down, because of people who wanted to make sure that they don't step on anyone's toes or watch what they say, which I appreciate. But nothing really too serious about racism at all.
Well, that's encouraging to hear. It sounds like, as much as our communities as a whole have a lot to work on, it sounds like that we in our industry are doing a fairly decent job. Not that we're perfect, because no one is. I know one of the things that made me really think, and this probably would have been about 7 or 8 months ago, prior to COVID, and when we actually were able to get together with folks, I was talking to someone about that this diversity task force was something that I wanted to make as a proposal for our board to look into, because I've talked to a number of agents with regards to them not seeing people like themselves within our association. And when I made the comment to this particular agent, their response back was, I don't believe there's racism. I don't believe there's racism anywhere. Prove to me that there's systemic racism. Sharif, I'll go to you first on this question. Do you feel that within our industry that there are issues of systemic racism, sexism, homophobia, and prejudice that we need to address as an industry, whether to Mark's comments amongst ourselves, Victoria's comments amongst ourselves with the public, or those people that we work with or partner with, such as our association, our regulator, or as Sandy made comments to earlier with regards to other industry partners such as mortgage brokers?
Let me unmute myself. I'm unmuted. I don't know if it's systemic, Chris. I can't say that it doesn't exist. So calling it systemic might be a bit of a high generality, and calling it non-existent would be a sign of ignorance. I think it definitely does exist. Whether it's systemic or not, I can't really comment on that. In 16 years, and I've done all kinds of business with all kinds of people. The occasions have been rare. Thank God they've been rare. So I can't say it's systemic. There is one thing I'm very, very aware of, is that I don't look very much different than the population in mass around me until I speak or my name is heard. So I kind of float by or blend in a bit easier than not. But I do sometimes hear the racism take place when people don't know that I'm in the room or aren't aware of where I'm from. So it's a catch-22 in the way I look particularly.
Right.
But is it systemic? I'd say there's definitely occurrences of it that should require or call for some form of treatment. But to say that it's not there would be just funny. It'd be laughable.
Umi, I'm going to ask you the same question with regards to racism or sexism and homophobia and prejudice within our industry. Do you think this is something that we as realtors need to address, and how can we address it if we do?
I definitely think as a society, we definitely need to address it. And being realtors, and we are a part of society, there is definitely systemic racism, sexism, homophobia, all of that. And we've all heard instances, or at least or faced them at some point in our lives. I personally choose to dwell on the good things and try and just get over that initial hurdle when I face any sort of what should I say, like sexism, racism, any of that. But as a society, for sure, we need to address it, and we need to address it at the grassroots. Us as an association of realtors, we can take steps to improve ourselves and to educate our members, and then hopefully it will spread
Right.
to the clients we deal with the society, and our homes.
No, and I think it was at our last meeting that a comment was made that one of the advantages that we have as realtors in Nova Scotia is that we're members of communities all across this province. So
Absolutely.
what we can share can be shared among everyone in this province.
Absolutely. We
So
go
Sandy-
into people's homes, which is, and that makes the reach even sometimes more, like we're able to reach more than just organizations that talk to people in their offices or in their schools. But when you enter homes and you sort of bring it into the conversation, it definitely can make a difference.
Excellent. So Sandy, you made a comment earlier about how when you started in the industry many years ago, if at all, there might have been a handful of people of Asian descent within our membership. And within the last couple of years, you've noticed that number increase. what do you think has brought on that change of having BIPOC Canadians join our association? You're muted there, Sandy.
There.
There you go.
I think realistically, the increase for, I guess, people moving over here from different countries, I feel a lot of it has to be like the students. I would say the students that are, going to school here and they're buying properties here and they really love the lifestyle in Nova Scotia, how easygoing it is here and how kind people are here. I think it's rubbed off, I guess, it's given like the students the opportunity to want to stay, whether or not it's making more money or not. I think it's more of a lifestyle. And I think a lot of them who have decided to stay, they see, examples of other BIPOC realtors, and maybe they see that there aren't enough. And maybe that's why they decided, well, here's an opportunity for me. I speak 3 languages, for example, or I can help people, who are university students. I feel like the majority of the influence is from the students with, that are deciding to stay and want to be a realtor, and they're there to, help people who can't speak English, So I just feel like the majority they're just influenced from students that are, graduates.
Right. Yeah, no, you're definitely right. We're very fortunate in this province to have as many post-secondary educations and international students that come to our facilities. So it definitely is a great opportunity for those folks like Damien to stick around, and even Sharif to stick around and call this province home and then take up on real estate as a career option. So Damien, I'm going to go to you. Coming from abroad, being our newest group in this clan, what do you, and the one thing that I like is that when you and I spoke and when I reached out to you about if you'd be interested on participating and being involved in the diversity task force, why is it something that you thought was important for you to be involved in?
I feel like it's something for me to be a part of, because of it being, well, like you said, I was not really too much representation in the industry, especially for someone like me. So I feel like if I'm gonna be in such an industry, I have to go at it at 100%, and I'll try to achieve different levels so that I can be that representation for people after me, because I don't think I'm gonna be the first or the last person to be a realtor in Nova Scotia. So if I could add to the community, our BIPOC community, to give persons after me that I guess that push in order to enter the industry, then by all means, I'll be the guinea pig. And I know that by volunteering for these different panels and different groups, that I for sure get insight, knowledge for myself that'll help me in my business. So the more information, the better.
No, and I appreciate that you're coming out. And as I said earlier, I'm very, very, very surprised and pleased, and makes me feel warm inside when I look out at when we've had our few meetings, whether it's those who've been able to participate via Zoom or in person in the classroom setting for our diversity task force. The diversity that we have within our task force is something that we rarely, if ever, have seen within the rest of our committees and our board. So I thank all of you panelists. And I'm just going to give you guys an option here, because as it seems right now, we are near the end of our time. I don't think we have any additional questions. Sandy's asking do you miss the sunshine? She says Bermuda, but it's Bahamas.
Yes, Bahamas. Yeah, I miss the sunshine every day. Like, as you can see, this little bit of sun I'm getting, it's okay, but it's nothing compared to what I'm used to.
No, it's definitely not. So I'm just going to do a final round table. I'll start with Ms. Sandy Lee for you guys to give any additional comments about with one, diversity, our industry, and your participation in the task force. So Sandy, I'll start with you.
Unmute. Chris, can you repeat that question? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
No, I'm just going to do a final roundtable and give all of our panelists an opportunity. If there's anything additional that you want to add with regards to diversity in our industry, your commitment and your participation in our task force.
Well, I do want to mention like some of the things we didn't touch base on. I mean, we did talk about racism and prejudice. I mean, the sexism and the homophobias. I mean, that's another topic that we really didn't shed some light on, but I feel like maybe we should,
That'd be another panel. There's another panel there. I can see it.
Perfect. But yeah, I do feel like there were some things missed on today's, topic discussion. And I just want to put it out there that we're all equal and we need to have a voice and we're here for one another and we have to advocate for each other.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's the strength that we have and the relationships that we have. As all of our brokerage documents say, we are cooperating brokerages. I think our strength lies within us as a people and as an organization. Ume, I'm going to go to you. What are your final wrap-up thoughts about diversity and our task force?
I was just thinking that one of the ways in which NSAR can help more diversity when it comes to realtors is maybe making the exam a little friendlier to people who don't have English as a first language. Because the one thing, I took the exam fairly recently, and I studied with some people in the class that didn't have English as their first language or were not native English speakers, and the way the wording of those exams is, it's really hard. So if you could, make it simpler, make it so that you test the knowledge, but not so much the ability to understand the language.
All right. No, that's definitely something we could pass along to the NSREC licensing and education committees, because they're the ones ultimately responsible for that. But that's definitely a great point that I've heard echoed from other agents as well. So thank you for that. Damien, what are your final thoughts on real estate and diversity and your participation in the task force?
My final thoughts is real estate is one of the best tools that anybody can use for their own financial freedom. I learned at a young age that if you own property, it makes you more valuable in the eyes of banks and lenders and such. So I feel like the younger you are, the quicker you get into real estate, the better you'll be when you reach retirement age, specifically for income property, which I try and specialize in. But Chris had asked us about systemic racism in Nova Scotia. And I feel like if it's not as blatant as it was back then, it for sure has existed in Nova Scotia, specifically for the Africville community. Persons were displaced and it was caused by developers. So those were persons who were part of the real estate industry. They were moved about 30 to probably an hour, 30 minutes to an hour out of the city. And this was a planned move. It was tactical. And you have persons who are still in the areas that were moved to those areas that don't have deeds to the land that they're sitting on, which I feel like is a gross injustice to persons living in Nova Scotia. So it's something that's live and well in 2020. And those persons out there, they need development just like any other community. And I feel like if we all share the resources that we have in the province, then everyone will be better off. So yeah.
Couldn't agree with you more. Couldn't agree with you more. So Sharif, the last word of our panelists I will throw to you is your final thoughts on diversity, our industry as it relates to diversity and racism. As Sandy's alluded to earlier, the topics of sexism and homophobia and other levels of prejudice, I think is definitely going to open itself up for a future panel discussion that Paige and I have already talked about, probably for January. But on today's topic, what are your final thoughts?
I think what Sandy said in the beginning is that we're all the same. Everybody's looking to, be happy and kind and respectful, and expects to be treated with kindness and respect as well. People should be encouraged within our organization, within the association, to ask questions. And if they don't ask, and they won't ask, what our role should be is that we should go out and try to educate them, whether it be, a newsletter item or a write-up about a particular event. I heard on the radio today something I never thought I would hear, was some guy arrested for threatening people celebrating Diwali. Like, I don't even know what Diwali is exactly about. I know it's a celebration, so you tell people happy Diwali. But, somebody was ignorant enough to threaten people, utterance of death threats, and he's in jail. I think we should reach out to people. A lot of times I hate to see situations where we're victimized, but we also don't help people understand what's in front of them, and people fear what they don't know. So whatever we could do to push or educate people around us as to what this celebration means to these people, or what that word is sensitive to other people. I mean, my wife, moved here when she was 18 years old. Her grasp of the English language was terrible. She spoke French and Arabic, and she would refer to people who were natives in terms that she didn't understand. She thought those were the right terms, and people would take advantage of trying to lecture her on that. Meanwhile, it stemmed from somebody not knowing something. Right. So again, if we're not educating people on what these differences are and how they actually are common, you know what I mean? Nobody within this international community of what comprises Nova Scotia and the Real Estate Association members does not share food, does not share experiences or stories. We are definitely a very telling people. So that should be emphasized or pushed among the population.
No, and I appreciate those final comments. I think that's one of the great things that we're going to see come out of our diversity task force. And you've hit the nail on the head. It's about education. You're talking about the circles of knowledge, and people don't know what they don't know. And one of the things that we've talked about as a task force is about helping to educate and understand that which we don't know and share these stories. There's been a number of stories that I won't share, but that were shared in our task force, that by us sharing those stories, it encouraged others amongst us to share their stories. And I think the more that we openly talk and share those stories, we can break down those barriers. We can create that additional education and knowledge base that I think has been lacking, not just in our industry. Our industry is just a slice of what you see all around you. But I think that where we will move forward as an industry, and I can't remember exactly which one of you had commented about it earlier, is that, and actually I think it was you, Ume, we are invited into people's homes all the time. So we have that opportunity to talk about this, and we have an opportunity to educate other people, whether or not they look like us or not. If they're invited into their home, there's a level of comfort there to begin with, and that starts the education process. So I want to thank all of you guys. I've just noticed that one of our diversity co-chairs has been elevated to the level of panelist, and so I can see you, Miss Susan Green. I can see you there on the screen, not with your video.
I can see you guys, but I can't see me. Hi.
No, your video is not on. But Susan, as one of our co-chairs, and just as we wrap up this here as well, I want to thank both of our co-chairs, Sandy and Susan, for being co-chairs and for taking on the responsibility of the task force. I know it's something that was presented by the board, but you two ladies are leading this with a lot of energy and heart and vigor. So thank you for that. Susan, you are the only one who hasn't had a chance to comment today. Is there anything you would like to share with our panelists and any of the attendees who are participating in today's conversation?
Thank you. I don't have all my devices off, so I apologize for ringings that I can't stop, but it's going to stop in a second. Yeah, you know what? This has been such a privilege for me because I'm learning so much And I think the most fascinating thing for me is that the more we meet and the more I listen and the more I hear, it's you come into this thinking that it's an issue that you're going to discuss and learn from, but it's like there are so many spokes that go out in so many directions as you start to acquire more knowledge. And like, for example, one of the biggest things for our regulator is to protect the public. And it was an aspect I hadn't even been thinking about when I was first lucky enough to sign up to join this task force. And, you know, one of the key things in protecting the public is making sure that they're treated with dignity and respect, and that they have knowledge and that they can make good decisions to help their families and to help with their income and to help with their so personal thing like housing. And it's a little intimidating, to tell you the truth, that there's so much to learn, but it's exciting, and I'm really lucky to be a part of these mini master classes that I keep getting. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Susan. So just to wrap up and to conclude, I think we've answered everyone's conversations and questions that were out there. I want to thank all of our panelists for taking time out of your day today and sharing some of your experiences and some of your life stories with regards to being in our industry that we obviously all love and cherish dearly. Thank you to all the attendees. As I said at the beginning of this session, this is going to be an ongoing series. Today, we've talked about one aspect of what the diversity task force has been engaged with looking into. This is going to be an ongoing conversation. We're going to have a lot more to do as an industry. We need to ensure that we continue to be welcoming, inclusive, and are actively being anti-racist. As many of us have heard, sometimes our silence causes more problems than us speaking out. So we need to be actively anti-racist in our welcoming and inclusivity within our industry. We want you guys to stay. The Diversity Task Force has got lots on their plate. Just as a special note, there's going to be some more coming out from us, such as a survey. So we want all of our attendees who are online right now to be on the lookout for more information coming out. Please, 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 please share it with your fellow members in your offices. Anyone who's ever sat down and talked with me know that I'm a passionate person with getting more of our members involved within our daily conversations and dialogue and our committees. We are successful when we work together.